Okay, you're live.
Hello, Rabbi Manis. It's a pleasure to have you on Project Likkutei Siches as we discuss Behaalosecha Beis in Chelek Yud Gimel. Good evening.
How are you? This is exciting. How is the overall project going?
It's really beautiful. It's been already, I think, close to 5 months, and we've been going through Likkutei Siches volume by volume. It's unbelievable that we're already here in basically our third Chelek. So before we begin, I just want to ask you if you can just give us a little bit of background or context to Chelek Yud Gimel as where you were when these siches, these Rashi siches, or this Chelek was said. If you could just give the audience a brief depiction of what was going on then.
Well, what were the years? I went out on Siches in Tafshin Lamed, end of Tafshin Lamed.
So I think Chelek Yud Gimel was in the beginning 73, Lamed Gimel.
So I was already away from 770. I was getting the Siches secondhand, so to speak. But those were the years when the Baalei Tshuva phenomenon became, exploded. And all over the world, Chabad houses were filled with Baalei Tshuva. Crown Heights was filled with Baalei Tshuva. That's when Hadar Torah began because of the demand. So it was a very good time in terms of Hafatzas Hamayones. It was kind of the turning point. It started in the 60s, in the Chafs. But the way it started was with a disturbance, an unhappiness. And people went looking and searching and desperate to find something. They didn't even know what they were looking for. The way that Rebbe described it in the Maimer, I think it was Purim. Purim of Tafshin Chaf.
Yeah, I saw that sicha.
Where the Rebbe says, Deidi sholach yodei min achur, v'homu me'ayloi. So the Rebbe says, what happened over there? Hamu me'ayloi. What happened over there? They developed a need that they couldn't even explain. A heseder is that they didn't understand. So those early Baalei Tshuva, the Rebbe once referred to as Heiche Neshamas, because they reacted to the Rebbe's Maimah.
Unbelievable.
So
and how did they appreciate these Rashi siches? Wasn't that very paramount during that time?
How did the Baalei Tshuva appreciate?
Yeah.
The question is, how did anybody appreciate the Rashi siches? It was such a chiddush, especially for older Chassidim. It was very hard for them.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so the 60s was like a hachana. It was like the cheshb hanefesh that makes you want something. In the 70s, the answer started coming. The answer to the 60s searching is become a Baal Tshuva.
Wow.
And it was an amazing, amazing time. Eventually, the Rebbe would say, there is no reason that Mashiach is not here. There has to be Hafatzas Hamayones. So the Rebbe says, Sigiven Hafatzas Hamayones. There has to be Yisrael Yisem Tshuva Miyad Him Machin Tshuva Geta. It's a pretty...
It's unbelievable. It's basically standing at the same time, like the chaos that's going on right now in the world.
Yeah.
In a way very similar to that time period.
But this is reaching a much deeper level. Because in the 60s, there was no violence. It was very peaceful. The rebellion. They went to meditation. They went to spiritual movements. It was not violence in the streets. In other words, it stirred up those who had a heiche neshama, or at least an edelkeit. Today, it's stirring up mamish the lowest level of ra be'etzem. And that's becoming nisbader. How are you mevader ra be'etzem? You take out the toiv and the ra vert is. That's what's happening today. So on the Siches, in Tofshin Lamed Aleph, we started Beis Chana in Minnesota. Beis Chana was for Balei Tshuva women, because the men already had Hadar Torah, they had the yeshiva in Kfar Chabad with Gafni. But what's going to be with the women? So as a joke, we said, okay, so we'll make a yeshiva for women. It was mamash a joke. We didn't have anything else to do. It was summer, the Chabad house was empty. So we sent out an invitation and 18 women showed up.
Wow.
And it was like day and night, mit gelernt und verbracht. They couldn't get enough. The hunger was so intense. Mamish around the clock. The next session, the next summer, was 42 women. I don't know where they came from, how they came. And then we made a winter program, 102 women. It was an amazing time.
Do you think that time changed over the years? Was it different in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a Olam HaTohu. Now it's more of a Olam HaTikun. So you had in those days, you meet a young college student, a girl, and you say, what are you doing? Not much. Okay, you want to go to Minnesota? Yeah, sure. Okay, here's a ticket. Go for how long? Whatever you want. A month, 2 months. The Wildkeit.
The spiritual Wildkeit.
Yeah. Nussi Garari, who was a shliach in Buffalo, New York, he would come to the women's Pegisha in New York, and he would get up and say that he has a sponsor, a Mr. Pfefferkorn. He made up a name. And he said, this Mr. Pfefferkorn is sponsoring tickets for any woman who wants to go to Minnesota from the Pegisha. So he would say, here's a dime. Go call your mother and tell her you're going to Minnesota. And 15 women would come to Minnesota. Unplanned, on the spur of the moment, without cheshbon, it was a little tehudik. And that's how
was your crowd mostly campus, college age, or it was?
Yeah, mostly. And then the way they changed their lives was also a little tehudik. A total ibekerish min hakotze al hakotze in a very short time. Wow. Today you don't see that. Today it's more miyushiv. People start with this mitzvah, take on another mitzvah. They have a schedule. They can't just come flying to Minnesota mitamo. But that was the 70s.
I'm a shliach on campus, and I just want to let you know that they're still partying on campus.
Yeah.
It's still tayadik.
Yeah, but in a different way. So I think like this, the 50s, the Rebbe's first decade, the world was on the level of a Ben Chacham. But gewollt verstehen. When they got frustrated because nobody gave them answers to their questions, they became the Ben Rasha. when the Ben Rosha got frustrated because nothing's happening, they became the Tam. So the 50s was the Chacham, the 60s was the Rosha, the 70s was the Tam. So what happened, in the 50s, the Ben Chacham, the Rebbe started the Pegishus, outreach to the universities, to the Ben Chacham, so to speak, those who were supposed to be the Chachamim. And what were the questions in those days? They were very good questions. How do I know which is true? You say like this, they say like that. No, what's the emes? Prove your shita. It was a shaila of a Ben Chacham. I will wissen. What's the truth? They couldn't come up with an answer. So they got frustrated and they decided there is no answer. There is no truth. And that became the 60s. Try it. Everything was an experiment. Leifahin, leifaher, try it. If it feels good, yeah, that's it. Davin Shalom can emes. It just has to feel right. So at one of the Pegishas that year, the Rebbe said, people have shailas. How do you know? How can you prove that the Torah? Head of the shailas. Try it, you'll like it. And that was exactly the spirit of the 60s. Just of the Shitta. So all of a sudden, when it comes to Yiddishkeit, where's the Tzarik, the Ben Chacham, mit deiner shailas? Be a member of the 60s, like the Tefillin, you'll see. And that was the Miftzayim.
Wow.
Towards the end of the 60s, but it was the Miftzayim. Anyway, Mad Gesucht, and they experimented, and they tried, and they got frustrated. Until they became the Ben Tam. I don't know anymore, ich weiß nicht. Mazeis, was tut sich in der Welt? I don't know anymore. Somebody give me a direction, give me something. That was the 70s. Hat man sich zugehabt. Wherever there was some Torah learning, people came running. Then came the 80s. Eine Idee Lushel. I'm not looking, I'm not searching. I don't even know what the kasha is.
Mommy, daddy, give me the credit card. Let me go buy a nice car.
Yeah. Anyway, what are we talking about tonight?
So, Behaalosecha Beis Chelik Yud Gimel, I just want to go give a brief introduction to the sicha and sort of get to the discussion that we're going to have on humility. Yeah. What is humility? Yeah. What is humility by the Eibishter?
Yeah.
So you please feel free at any time to, share your points as we get to Siches and Tes. So the sicha begins with Vayish Moshe anav me'ei mikol adam, that Moshe was the most humble person, or he was humbled in front of the Jewish people. And the Rebbe asks a simple question. How could Moshe feel less or lesser than another Jew? Moshe was the greatest person that ever lived. Moshe spent 40 days and 40 nights learning Torah with the Eibishter. Moshe had a free pass to speak with the Eibishter at any time. So what is this? What does it mean? He was humbled. He felt smaller than another Yid. And the Rebbe shares, right in the beginning, the Rebbe shares the Friedman Rebbe's Maimer and Tafshin Yud, the Rebbe Rashab, that Moshe made a simple calculation. He said that if another Yid had his abilities and capabilities, then that other Yid would develop it at a greater level than him. So he felt humbled in front of another Yid. But the Rebbe asks another question on that and says, but Moshe had nevuah, the gift of nevuah, the gift of prophecy. And in that, if another Yid had prophecy, how would he develop it more? Nevuah is a gift. There's no development. There's no involvement of mata of the person. So in this, you can't answer the original question. So it's mashma, again, in the sicha, right in the beginning, it's mashma that the Rebbe sort of says that there are two levels of humility, of anivus. There's anivus al pi cheshbon, the calculation of Moshe, and then anivus etzem, the essential level of humility, which we're going to get to later on. So there are right away two levels. Then the Rebbe continues with one more point. He shares, this is a hadran on Saita, he shares the Gemara there. Humility ended by Rabbi, the times of Rabbi. And Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Nachman have a discussion, each one defending themselves. Rabbi Yosef says, but Anava did not end. Humility didn't end because the Ika Ana. Rabbi Nachman says, Yiraschet didn't end because the Ika Ana. But the Rebbe says they were both in the same time period. They both were friends. They hung out together. Why didn't they just say together? Both didn't end. Fear of sin and humility didn't end. That means that according to Rav Nachman, he didn't agree with Rabbi Yosef. So the Rebbe says very interestingly that again we see that there are two levels of humility. According to Rav Nachman, there's the humility, the calculated humility. And then that was Rabbi Yosef.
Which did not end.
What? Which
exactly did not end.
Yep. And then there's the level of Rabbi, which did end. In other words, Rabbi Nachman felt that Rabbi Yosef, he knew everything. So how could he be? It was a positive thing. How could he be humbled by another year that Rabbi Yosef was the greatest? And Nachman felt that Rabbi Yosef, there was nothing great. Let's be real for a moment. What did the Torah do to you? It changed you. It transformed you. But he did feel that Rabbi Yosef, Batla Nava, when Rabbi Yosef, Kshemes Rabbi Yosef, Kshemes Rabbi. So again, we see the reference that there are two levels of humility. There's the level of humility that's al pi cheshbon, sort of like Moshe calculated the milas, the advantages of another Jew, but nevuah, but for prophecy, Moshe was greater than everybody. So we see these two references in the Gemara, the end of Saita, Rab Nachman's analyzation of Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi, and we see this as well by Moshe Rabbeinu. And sort of in Ches and Tes, the Rebbe shares, and this is really what our discussion is going to be tonight. The Rebbe shares this idea that there are two levels of anivus, al pi cheshbon and an essential level of anivus. So we really need to discuss this and if you can give us some words, some vocabulary.
Let's fill in a little bit. How is it that Rabbi Yosef can say, Ike ano, claiming to be an onov, isn't that the opposite of modesty? So where's the Rebbe's answer there?
He made a cheshbon.
No, but it's amazing chiddush. The Rebbe is saying that if you don't know how great you are, then you're not modest.
Right.
You're just misinformed.
Right.
You're deceived in yourself. So, this is a big chiddush. Modesty and anivus is absolutely emes. It's not a misjudgment. A smart person who thinks he's stupid, that's not anivus, because it's not emes.
Right.
Only a person who knows how smart he is can be humble. And that includes humility. The only way to be humble is to know that you are humble and how humble you are and still be humble. That's like...
Right. Right, exactly.
So the person who mistakes himself, who thinks he's less than he is, that's not real humility. What a chiddush. So unless you know how humble you are, you're not really humble.
It's the more advanced person. The novelty is in the person who's extremely talented, that he has humility.
So then what does humility mean? It means if somebody else had all of my gifts, including my humility, they would put it to better use. They would get more out of it because they would try harder, something like that. What about I think what the Medrash, that Moshe was humbled because he saw the generation before Mashiach who had none of his gifts and yet were devoted and had Mesiras Nefesh. What about that cheshbon? Is that different? Because it's not like we had his gifts and put it to better use. We have no gifts.
Right.
And that humbled him.
So what did he see?
So it sounds like, what does it mean someone else would make better use? First of all, how do you know? How can you be sure? And if you're not sure, are you really humble? It could be that you're on a higher level than me. That's not exactly humility. Moshe had to be sure that others would put it to better use. And the proof is the generation before Mashiach. Without the gifts. So imagine what they would do if they did have the gifts. I want to start with a story. I don't know how many people know this, but it's an amazing, amazing story. And I heard this from the person himself. Back in the Yuds, there was a bocher, 16 years old, in a Misnagdishi yeshiva, learning Musar. A tmimis dike bocher, American kid, took everything literally and seriously, and he was told that he has to be an onav. And that gaiva is a midoro, meguna. So he worked very hard at becoming an onav. He's telling me the story. He said, I worked at it ad mitzui hanefesh. And one of my chavedim saw how much I was suffering because I was trying so hard. So he suggested to me that I go speak to the new Lubavitcher Rebbe and get an eitzah. So, being a tmimis dike boy, he gets on the train, gets off at Eastern Parkway in Kingston, and he walks into the Rebbe's room. Didn't ask anybody. He knocked on the door. The Rebbe came to the door without the kapota.
Wow.
And he said to the Rebbe, I need an eitzah for gaiva. So the Rebbe said to him, and listen to this answer, which is, the Rebbe said to him, any time you feel like you are better than somebody else, make sure you're better. You hear?
Unreal.
But it's so characteristic of the Rebbe. Use the gaiva, not fight it. Yeah, you feel like you're better than somebody else. No, so be better.
Embrace it.
But make sure you're taka better. There's no greater anivas than that. So listen to the rest of the story, which is funny. He said, I have no tightness to the Rebbe. I mean, he didn't know me. How was he supposed to know that I was on a higher madrega already? He says, after 7 years of avoda beyegia atzuma ad mitzui hanefesh, these are his words. He says, Baruch Hashem, I was matzliach. Leisisne anova, Ike ano. And this was, he was 17.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, he says then he changed yeshivas. He didn't say which yeshiva he went to, but seems like it was outside of New York. He changed yeshivas, and it was terrible, terrible. Agmas nefesh. What was the agmas nefesh? The yeshiva that he moved to didn't appreciate his gadlus. You see what an onav he was? Anyway, so yeah, you have two sides to the story. The narishkeit, without Chassidus, how you try to be an onav and you vermischt den Kopf, and then the Rebbe's answer, which is... Anyway, let's go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. First of all, what is anivus? How is anivus different than shiflus? Shiflus literally means I know my faults, and it makes me feel very inadequate. That's not anivus. Anivus is, first of all, anivus comes with simcha,
Right.
not with heartbreak. When you recognize you're shifless, there's no occasion for simcha. Whereas anivus comes with simcha. Ye'osfu anovim. Yeah?
The Friedman Maimer talks about that. In Tafshin Yud, Hargoshas Atzmai is Atzvus, and Anova is Simcha, which is really opposites, polar opposites.
Right. I think that Rebbe brings it in the sicha, no?
Yeah, in the Ha'ara, he brings that.
Yeah. So this is already a big chiddush in Chassidus, that anivus comes besimcha. It's not fakvetched, because it's not shiflus. Now we understand why. In order to be an onav, you have to know your milus. If you don't know your milus, it's not anivus, it's just a mistake. Ki'ilu loimar, you're feeling very humble because you think you're stupid. What's going to happen when you find out that you're not stupid? Then the anivus is gone. So if you're just fooling yourself, that's not anivus. So anivus means you have to know your greatness, including your anivus. So it's not depressing. So what then is the anivus? The anivus is the other person could be greater, or certainly would be greater. So the shaila is, in nevuah, how can another person be greater? You can't control nevuah. If the Eibishter chooses you to be his messenger, you're a navi. If he doesn't choose you, there's nothing you can do about it. Even though in the times of the Nevi'im, there were actually yeshivas. Right? Elisha had a yeshiva. And they came to learn nevuah. So you would think if you learn harder and you're a bigger masmid, you'll become a bigger navi. No. The learning was to remove the manias so that you could be, your mukhsha, to be a navi. But the nevuah itself, completely out of your control. So how can you say that somebody else would be a bigger navi?
Right.
I don't know why it's never mentioned. The Rebbe is asking the Shaila, Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he was on Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, and he knew that he took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, and he knew, why is it not also, he knew that it says in Torah that Ish Moshe Onav. How could he be an Onav when he himself wrote those words?
Right. There's a letter of the Friedman Rebbe that shares a story of Reb Mordechai who got an aliyah on these words, V'ish Moshe Onav Me'ed, and he came after the aliyah, before he became a chassid, he came down and he said, I'm a bigger anav than Moshe, because Moshe, everybody knows he's an anav. Me, nobody knows. I'm even more humble than him.
Yeah. That story, it's telling how Mordechai was embarrassed when he remembered that thinking. What was he embarrassed by? The narishkeit. That he thought he was a bigger anav than Moshe Rabbeinu. You know, it's not so terrible. First of all, who says he wasn't? The fact that he thought he was doesn't prove that he's not. Like we're learning in the sicha. What he was really embarrassed by is something that a chassid isn't guilty of. Chassidim can be baligaiva. This is, nishkan. He walked into the Beis Medrash, into the shul, umeret wegen Moshe Rabbeinu. How did the subject change to him? You are a bigger anav than Moshe Rabbeinu. Naniach. Aber jetzt redt man nicht wegen dir. Can you stick to the topic? You're the bigger anav. Fine. So now try to figure out how big was Moshe Rabbeinu's anivus. Because we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. How did it become about you? That's embarrassing. Every topic has to be about you. That's a mius. Not nadish. Nadish kann man noch vertragen, but mius. Anyway, so what exactly is anivus? It sounds like if somebody had my potential, they would produce more. So in simple language, anivus means I know that I did not live up to my potential. No, that's what it comes down to. Given my gifts and my talents, I should have accomplished more. But the main emphasis is someone else would have accomplished more. So the fact that I didn't accomplish all of my potential, okay, so I'm a failure. Doesn't make me lower than everybody else. The fact that somebody else would have accomplished more, okay, now I'm lower. And by the way, the Rebbe says, "B'fnei kol ha'odam" means even non-Jews. Ein Yehudim.
So could you say humility in a state of potentiality?
What does that mean?
It's not that the people were truly greater than Moshe. It was a cheshbon, it was a calculation. If there's an if to this whole situation.
Yeah.
The if could generate being humbled by another.
Yeah. But it has to be a realistic if, not stam, a possibility. In other words, korev levadai, that somebody else would have you have to wonder, where does such thinking come from? Where does this cheshbon?
Right.
If somebody else had my potential, they would have done more. And that gives you respect for every person and makes you feel humble. So you're talking to a lowlife, a loser, and you're thinking, if he had my talents, he would be even better than me. That's it. And for this, you respect him? This humbles you? So there's a story I read recently that one time in Lubavitch, somebody had the chutzpah of keeping his store open on Shabbos. And it was a huge scandal. And the whole town was talking, the Chil Shabbos, Chil Shabbos. Chatsche Fagin was farbringing once, and he was crying. And he says, every time I walk past that store, it gives me a pain in the heart. And he said, not because the storekeeper is Machal Shabbos. The storekeeper never went to yeshiva. He never learned a Maimer Chassidus. He doesn't know what Kedusha Shabbos is. He's Machal Shabbos. I do know. I did learn Chassidus. And I'm not treating Shabbos the way it's I'm the Machal Shabbos.
Reminded him.
So in a certain way, the fact that the other guy would make better use if he had that is a reflection on me. If I don't live up to my potential, okay, so nobody's perfect. But if somebody else would use my potential even better than me, then I have no excuse. So that's the humility. However, that is not the essential humility.
Right.
Humility be'etzem. Why? Because the humility does not affect you essentially. It doesn't affect your essence. It affects a quality that you're missing. It's a detail. What is wrong with me? One thing, I did not use my potential the way everybody else would have. Doesn't affect my whole existence. Humility be'etzem means it affects my etzem. What is my etzem? My whole existence. So there is a humility that affects your entire existence. It's not a flaw, an imperfection. Your whole existence is invalidated. So it has nothing to do with what anybody else would accomplish, has nothing to do with what you accomplished. Your existence is not valid. That's called be'etzem, right? So what is that? And then, how do you say about the Eibishter that he is humble? Because another Eibishter would do a better job. Where is that cheshbon that can humble the Eibishter?
Right.
And not only that, the Eibishter's humility, I don't think he doesn't say this in the sicha, but the Eibishter's humility came before there was anyone, right? It was,
right.
It's in Maisa Bereshis itself is already the humility. I think the Hesbet is something like this. What is the opposite of humility?
Guide.
What does that mean in English?
Arrogance, or I'm greater than another.
Oh, so now that we have this new definition of anivus, that doesn't work anymore. The fact that you're greater than the other person, yes, that you're supposed to know that. So you say, okay, so the opposite of anivus is when you think you're greater and you're not. That's not even arrogance.
Right.
That's just stupidity. So now we have to have a different definition for arrogance.
Right.
So a person who thinks he's smarter, better, stronger, no, maybe he is. And if he's not, he's an idiot. That's the difference between gaiva and hispirus. Gaiva is from Yesod Ha'esh. Hispirus, which sounds like the same thing, no? Boasting, but that's from Yesod Ha'ruach. Because the guy who boasts doesn't think he's smart. He knows he's an idiot. He just likes to boast. So it's a stam ruach, luft. So I think the opposite of anivus is not the feeling of superiority. The opposite of anivus is the feeling of contentment. I'm fine. Zufrieden.
It's all good.
Huh?
It's all good.
I'm all good. I'm fine. And in general, what is avas atzmei? Avas atzmei doesn't mean you walk around thinking you're the smartest. Avas atzmei means it doesn't matter if I'm smart. I'm very important. I'm very precious. So anivus would mean, without any chesrenes, my existence is not valid. My very existence, which is atzmus, right? The etzem of my whole existence is not right. Not something is missing. The whole thing is not right. How can we say this about the Eibishter? The Eibishter was not humbled because he was missing something. The Eibishter's humility was, why are you creating a world? You're not missing anything, so why are you creating a world? So where is the anivus? Usually we understand the mokim she atameitze gedulosei, atameitze anvosnusei. You think that creating the world is a big chochmah, but really it's a little degrading. So what is the anivus? That the Eibishter would lower himself into becoming a carpenter and creating a world. Not lefi kvedei. Lavur choy de malko ishtamet b'mila de adyeta. The humility is not that he is getting his hands dirty and papachket by creating a world. The humility is, was hat dem gefällt? What are you creating a world for? You're perfect, you're everything, you're a nitzchi, you're a bli gvul, you're kel yochel. Was fell there? What are you creating a world for? The fact that he created the world, idataich, I am yochid u'miyuchad, and it's not enough. It's not enough. That's the anivus be'etzem. I am, but that's not enough. That means that my whole existence is not satisfying. It's garnished. What will make it better? If instead of being yochid u'miyuchad, I become echad. Not without you, with you. That is an incredible anivus. By myself, garnished. With you, perfect. So Moshe Rabbeinu's anivus was not because he was lacking, he didn't live up to his potential, he could have done better, he failed in something. No. His whole existence didn't make sense to him. Why am I? That's anivus be'etzem. And that's the hisbonenus of Eineid Milvadi. What? Not what are you good for? Why are you Bechlal? Where'd you come from? Werde gebeten to exist. Without the episode. So it's not I failed, I'm not good, I made a mistake. What am I? Why am I? So unless the Eibush that gives me a shlichus, I shouldn't be Bechlal. So anytime when it says the Marshal Ava Atzmis, what does Ava Atzmis mean? It's not al pitam vadas. Okay. What does the word Atzmis mean? It means without this, I am not me. This is me. That's called Atzmus. An anivus that is Atzmi means not something about me. No, the whole me teig nicht. What by the Eberste? The me being Yochidum Yuchad, das teig nicht. So I saw this very, very nice thing. I forget, I'm not sure someplace. Some Zellickson would know where it is. This poet, you remember the guy Tzvi Yair? Yeah, remember this guy? He wrote poetry, and he would send it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would be Magia many times. So there's a copy of a poem that he wrote, and the Rebbe's Haggadah. So in the poem he wrote like this. Now I'm not the exact words, but Atahu Hashem levadecha. Ata Siches Hashemayim Shmei Hashemayim Haaretz v'chol Yamim v'chol Hashabem v'ata Machayes Kulam Tzvor Hashemayim v'chol Mishtachim Atahu Hashem Asher Bacharta B'Avram U'matzos Es Levov V'Einem Lefanecha. So he teaches like this. Atahu Hashem levadecha. Teig nicht. Alone. So Ata Siches Hashemayim. Still alone. Ein loy ach v'reya. Haaretz v'chol asher aleha hayamim v'chol asher behem, and still alone. Until b'charta b'Avram u'matzos es levov v'einem lefanecha zeis hapam yesh loy ach v'yesh loy reya. So in the poem he wrote, the Atahu Hashem levadecha kiviyochol lonely. The Rebbe's order was he took out the kiviyochol, and instead of lonely, he wrote echad u'miyuchad. But the rest of the poem was accepted. That's the taich in the davening. Das darf man trachten, because man davent, that Ata Hashem levadecha is not a compliment. Oh, the Eberste given allein. No, that's the problem. And in order to solve that problem, Ata says Hashemayim hat nicht geholfen. Shmei Hashemayim hat nicht geholfen. Yamim v'chol Hashem. Ata Machayes Kulam, es helft nicht. Nicht das de Kavanah. Matzah says, Levove neman lefanecha hadas dekavana. That's anivus. For two things. First of all, what's wrong with just being you, echad u'miyuchad? And secondly, my existence helps. Yeah. With Avraham is Hashem, yeah? Oh, that's the two parts of the Anivus. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he could have used his talents better, but that's not what the Anivus is. The Anivus is, Yener would have used it better. So without Avraham, the Eibishter is not zufrieden. Okay, that's Anivus. With Avraham, he is. Oh, that's even greater. Avraham can mashlim sein dem Eibishter. So that is the Eibishter's Anivus. And that's the chush that every human being has, because we're created in the Eibishter's image. Just me, even if I'm perfect, nicht kein Tachlis. That's why I think, just my eigene Teure, what does it mean, Loi Teiv Heyesa Adam Levadi? So first of all, it goes on the Eibishter, Adam Elyon. Why did the Eibishter create the world? Because Loi Teiv Heyesa Adam Levadi. Even if it's Adam Elyon, that is perfect and has no chesrenis whatsoever, aber levadei teig nicht. Was teig nicht? Loi toiv. It doesn't say lo yochel. A man can't be by himself because what is he going to eat? Veret frem kochen. Or even lo yochel lias levadei. How are you going to have a baby? You can't have a baby by yourself. You have to have a wife. Nay. The only chesaron is that it's not toiv. So even if you can do everything yourself, because you're a kol yochel, but where's the toiv?
Doesn't that make a pgam on the shleimus of the Eibishter?
Verkehrt. What it's saying is, even Shleimusa de Koila, even the most perfect being, nor is not enough. In other words, the Anivus is a mile on top of the Shleimus. So the Eibishter is not only perfect, he's also an Onav.
Shem sheyesh lakech b'ligvul, yesh lakech b'gvul. That's pshat.
Nimna hanem nois. And that's why it's takye l'mayla metam v'das. There's no practical reason to not be content being alone. Was is leiteiv? What's not good? If you're a koil yochel, what's not good?
Right.
So it's imperfect, epis felt. Es felt garnished. Es ist nicht toiv. So now we have a new definition of what toiv means. Toiv means yener is der negeya. If you're a nice guy and you give a lot of tzedakah because you're a nice guy, you're not an ish toiv. You're doing toiv, but you can't say that you are toiv. That's why Gimel Klippas Hatmeis she'ein behem toiv klal, like neshamas that have from Gimel Klippas Hatmeis ein behem toiv klal. And yet, chesed leumin, they do chesed. which is a big chiddush, by the way, and it's very impressive, more impressive than anything else. That somebody who ein bahem toiv klal does toiv. It's the tachlis hakavana from Brias Ha'olam. What he's doing is toiv. He's not toiv. Why? He's doing toiv because he believes that toiv is the right way. See, he's a chacham. He's an intelligent human being. Toiv, he's not toiv. What is toiv? Like the nefesh habahamis of a Jew. The nefesh habahamis of a Jew is be'etzem, beteva, rachmonim, and geim lechasodim. Right? That's the. So what does that mean? It's not they give tzedakah. Another person's need is more real and more important to them than their own. So what is toiv? Toiv means not me, you. L'chayret, it's very closely related to anivus. Anivus means what? Me. You. And that's why that word, bittul, doesn't mean ich bin gar nicht. Bittul means you're everything. So now, the gaiva that we reject has become much edler. It's an edler gaiva, and it's still objectionable. What is the edler gaiva? I don't think I'm so smart. I don't think I'm the best. I don't think I'm the greatest. But if there's a problem, I got to think about me first. If there's a hunger going on, I got to get as much food, And then when I have my food, I'll worry about you too, because I'm a nice guy.
Put the thing on the airplane, put the thing on first, the oxygen on you first.
Yeah. I think that's the nakuda. Why Chassidus kochtzach in Eined Milvadei. Stock in Welt, Eined Milvadei. What is that supposed to produce? It could be very misunderstood.
Right.
Welt garnished, ich bin garnished, Eined Milvadei, b'meila, lam it up.
What I want.
Uh-huh.
Let me do what I want.
I don't count. Yeah. I don't count. Nothing matters. So it's a garnished. That's not the pshat. 7? I think at 9. Okay. Yeah. So the Friedman Rebbe writes in the Siches, "Vos is a chassid? A chassid is somebody who is ibegegeben letzorche hazulas." How do you become really devoted to other people's needs? Only from manivus. And again, what does anivus mean? My existence is not justified unless you're part of my shlichus, then my existence means something. Otherwise, so I don't know if that's the same as bittul hayesh and bittul b'metzias are the same. Maybe this is even higher than bittul b'metzias. But whatever it is, it describes the etzem of the person, not a detail. So if you find that you're missing a detail, that's an anivus al pi seichel, al pi cheshbon. I could have been greater, and I failed. I didn't. But then, if I had not failed, if I didn't have this chesaron, then I'm rashke ba'ag. That's the chesaron of any midah that is al pi seichel. An ava that's al pi seichel. Emunah al pi seichel. Emunah al pi seichel. Somebody gives you good advice 10 times in a row. Then you ask him advice 11th time, and because what he's telling you doesn't make sense. So you figure, okay, I've had emunah. But why do you have emunah? Because 10 times he was right. No, Mr. he'll be right again. Das ist emunah al pi seichel. Hat sich verdient, dass soll ihm glauben. That's not real emunah. So every time it's al pi seichel, the chesaron is, if not, if he wasn't right 10 times in a row, would you believe him? No. So you don't believe him. You have an av al pi seichel, al tluya b'dover. And without that dover, b'teila ha'ava. So if you have a nivus al pi seichel, what if it should turn out that nobody could do better than you? Gone? Eis.
Done.
The humility is gone. So I think going back to that shayla, the Eibishter himself says that Moshe onov mikol ha'odam asher pnei adama. How can Moshe still be an onov? So maybe the answer is, wait, if the Eibishter hadn't said that, would I still be an onov? I'm only an onov because the Eibishter said. Okay, that's not the real thing. If you tell me I'm an onov, okay, then. And if I didn't tell you?
What's the maila in I matter because you matter? What's the maila in that?
I was going to get to that. What is b'chlal the maila of anivus?
Right.
You don't think you're great. So what? Wer fragt bei dir b'chlal? Or like somebody once said, don't be an onov. You're not that important. Was pravus to mir anivus. So again, you have to follow the sof davar. The maila of anivus is it lets you connect to somebody else. Without anivus, there's no connection. Yem. Jeder ich is a pirud. Right? Yazev Rosh Hadarkev ish ein machshavesav. Ich is a pirud. And it's interesting, in Hayem Yem it says that this was an answer that the Rebbe Rashab gave in Yechidus. What's an Negeya? That it was in Yechidus. It's a pretty scary thing. Somebody came into Yechidus. Yechida meeting Yechida. And the Rebbe says to him, I'm sorry, I can't connect to you. The ich doesn't let. In Yechidus.
Wow.
So the chesaron of gaiva or ich is that it doesn't allow the v'hayu lebosar echad. So the tachlis is not bittul. The tachlis is achdus. But without the bittul, you can't get to the achdus. So loy teiv hiyesa adam levadoi allows you to dovag be'ishtei v'hayu lebasar echad. But if teiv liyes levadoi, dafach denisht. And there'll never be achdus, a yichud.
While we're on this topic, I just want to bring up that mimer of the Friedman Rebbe, which I think is very negeh, it's very relevant to our times, because the Friedman Rebbe says that argoshas atzmai, self-conscious, being self-aware, brings depression, brings atzvus. It's direct result. And I think that we're living in a time with social media and internet and all these, ways of self-expression. In a certain sense, it brings depression, while anivus, humility, brings simcha, brings joy, brings freedom.
Yeah.
And I think this sicha is really, as you're saying, anivus be'etzem, I think this is one of the most important topics specifically for our time.
Yeah, and that's why the advice, if you're depressed and you're given advice, you have to improve your self-image. You have to have a better self-image. You have to give your children high self-image. You're making them depressed. Because high self-image is just as bad as a low self-image.
Right.
And what is the chassaron in both? Self. High and low is just a detail. The ikid is it's about yourself. Teignisht. You're going to get depressed. So, I think the Friedman Rebbe writes someplace, was is a mensch? A medaber. How is he different from an animal? The difference is a human being, a mensch, sucht epis hecher. That's the teva of a human being that makes him different from an animal. It's not the maila of a human being. It's the definition of a human being. The teva definition of what makes you human, mesucht epis hecher. Which in other words, a human being is not content to be human.
Wow.
An animal, if you leave him alone, he's content. A tzemeach, if you don't step on him, zufrieden. A daimon, if you don't break it and destroy it and baltashchis, he's zufrieden. I'm a daimon, I like being a daimon. I'm a tzemeach, I like being a tzemeach. And if I'm a chai, I love being a chai. What's a human being? A human being is human and doesn't like it. Sucht epis hecher. Hecher than what? Hecher than what he was created to be. He was created human. A human being wants to accomplish something that was not given. So if he's a perfect human being, he's frustrated. So all the times you were told, sei a mensch. No. Wer epis mer wie a mensch. Not teure im derech eretz. That you get to be a real mensch.
Not shlemus.
So a human being who says, if nobody bothers me, lum it up, Don't make me trouble. Mizach nicht in meine Geschäften, and I'll be completely content. Your mamish achayira. You have achieved the level of a behemoth. Because a human being is not content being a mensch. That he was created. Adam lo-omol yevolid takes a whole new meaning. Why omol? Because he's not content with what they gave him. And that's teva. So that has nothing to do with kedusha, with aveda, with bit. No, that's just the teva Adam. The shaila is, you want to be something more than human. No, what's more than human? What? That's not more. It's weniger. So that's why without learning Chassidus, you don't know what's more. You think becoming more famous, mehr kovid, mehr spilus, excitement. No, that's all human. You haven't become more. And maybe that's also the taich. Ani lo nivreisi, elo l'shamash eskaini. The ani is nothing. Lo nivreisi, it's a garnish megarnish. Not the ani is not perfect. The ani is lo nivreisi. That's anivas be'etzem. Ich darf bechal nicht sein. Elo, so why am I? L'shamash eskaini. Oh, okay.
Then I matter. Then I'm alive.
Then I'm justified in being alive. I have a license to live. Otherwise, lo nivreisi. Es hebt sich nicht an. There's nothing. It's an amazing statement, and the Rebbe hat sich an dem gekocht, and darf in that Girse.
Right. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unreal how by not being, you're being who you truly are.
Yeah. And that's only in Chassidus. In Musar, you know your chesroinus, but you don't question your existence. I am so ashamed. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm. Low self-image. So what do? You replace it with a high self-image. I'm a Rosh Hashiva. I'm a Rashke Bahag. I'm a Tzaddik. I'm an Onov.
Another Maila.
Yeah. And you forget that, but why do you exist in the first place, right? The Ovis Ha'olam, why was Yitzchak born through a nes? Yaakov and Esav born through a nes. Why did it have to? Well, all the Imois were Akoris. Why? Because so there has been Chassidus is because the whole existence of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael is l'mayla mederach hateva. Okay. Another way of saying it is Yitzchak knew as darf b'chlal nicht sein. Wie bist du b'chlal geworden? Ja, b'meile is Eved Hashem b'muhusei, be'etzem. And the same with Yaakov. Für wann bist du da gefallen? Before you start thinking, we're not tzaddik, abeinani, arosha v'toivloi, wait. You're skipping a step. Was bist du bechlal geworden?
And if you could connect this back to the sicha of the question of Moshe in Nevuah, how he felt humbled in the presence of somebody else.
The humility is not somebody else. The humility is my existence is not valid unless I can do something for you. In other words, you're mashlim, you make my existence justified. It has nothing to do with the other, I'm not good, he could have been better. It's not better, it's not worse, it's why am I? So I'm sitting and thinking, Ani lo nevresi. What am I doing, B'chal in Olam Hazeh? What am I doing here? Somebody knocks on the door and says, can you give me some food? Oh. So the other person is not only more valid than me, the other person makes me valid. As ich ken tona teve. That's why I'm here 70, 80 years. Otherwise, weiß ich nicht, what am I doing here?
So as far as quality is concerned, the quality in the person is that he's created in a way that he wants to be greater than himself. There's a quality there. There's a maila in that.
Yeah, but the Rebbe uses the expression as zucht epis hecher, not greater. Greater is gaiva. He doesn't want to be greater. He wants to be hecher, which is edelkeit, not yeshes. So he doesn't want to become a mushlam. He wants to be absorbed into something bigger than him. Das heißt hecher, werden hecher.
So lemata, this is really the greatest matana. But lemaila, where's the what's the, as far as the Eibishter is concerned, what's the maila shabadavar? What's the advantage? And you mentioned like, hey, but
the maila is that instead of being yochid, he can become echad. And that's why the emphasis is Hashem echad, not Hashem yochid. Yochid is not good. You know what I mean? It's not Gutzkeit. Where's the Gutzkeit in being a yochid? There's nothing. Echad is good. To become one with another person, that's a pusha Gutzkeit. And that's even in the teva of the nefesh habahamis Shabi Yisrael. So I think it's Tzemach Tzedek said, the Eibishter hat gehat a teive, and das ist unser Mazel. We are so lucky that he had a teive. Because if not, it's Shamayim Lashem v'Haaretz Nosan Livnei Yodam. We would never connect. Without his teive, which means without his anivas. We would be totally alone, just like he would be yochid. We would be yochid. Yep. Okay. Now you have to fit it all into the sicha. You have to go over the sicha again, the various nekudas and the various the knetchen. what anivus is, what it's not, the different levels, different. But I tell you, from the whole thing, the thing that sticks in my mind is, if you don't know you're an onav, you can't be an onav. Until now, I thought, even if you know you're an onav, you can still be an onav. No, not even. Dafke.
That's beautiful. I just want to ask you a little bit on what it was like translating into English, as the Rabbi was talking those years where you were translating Likkutei Siches in middle of the Farbrengen. If you can talk a little bit of
you're so into Likkutei Siches. I wasn't translating Likkutei Siches.
I'm saying translating the Farbrengen.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think about it now, and I weiß nicht. First of all, the chutzpah to even try. I can't take such an achrayus. That's crazy. But it was a wild time. It was a wild. And now I think, let me try to do a sicha. It's impossible. So the first Farbrengen, Hillel David Krinsky gets all the credit for making the whole thing, the whole hookup that went all over the world. So for the first Farbrengen, he asked a few people to come, and each one did a sicha, which was really not good because he had different voices. But it was so difficult that after a sicha, we were wiped out. We were pashat omkeiches. We were completely drained. I don't know if it was from the tension or just from the anstrengendness to keep halten kop, So one very capable individual didn't come back the second time. Forget about it. Why? Because he tried to understand the sicha while he was talking. You can't do that. Your mind has to go blank. And the Rebbe's voice has to come in one ear and come out the mouth. It can't go through the brain. Because if you stop to think, you fall behind. You can't. So what he did is he listened, then quickly said it, then listened and quickly said it. It sounded horrible, and Satam is gemattert. He was Eismensch after one sicha. So I don't know. I think it was the second Farbrengen that maybe two people showed up, and then the third Farbrengen, nobody showed up. So I was left doing it all. So just to make the funny part of it, I wanted to be professional, to do it right. So I looked, I bought some books, how to do simultaneous translation. So the only place where they do simultaneous translation is at the UN. I mean, more than a couple of words between a president and a prime minister or whatever. But in terms of lecture, the only place they do is the UN. So the books gave you advice like, look over the notes carefully, because every speaker gives his translator
the notes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's not going to work. Then the other advice was, in the UN, the translator had a button on his table. If he pushed the button, a little light went on by the speaker's podium. That meant slow down. Okay, so that wasn't going to work either. So the books were completely useless. So I went and I looked in halacha, actually halachas for a maturgaman. So one of the halachas was that the maturgaman is not allowed to speak louder than the Rav, which is kind of strange because one of the reasons you need a maturgaman is that people should be able to hear.
Right.
So what do you mean don't speak louder than the Rav? It doesn't mean louder, more audible. Louder means don't become more of a personality than the Rav. Don't draw attention to yourself, which was probably the hardest part of the whole thing. L'mashal, the Rebbe set up a slightly funny, yeah. So you translate it with a little bit of a, nobody asked you to laugh. Or if the Rebbe gets upset and you get upset. No, you don't exist. You're just a voice. People will hear that the Rebbe is upset, but you don't get upset. Rebbe's do. You're a maturgaman. And then a really important thing. The Rebbe wanted to verbringen a verbringen. It's not a show. So the Rebbe wanted to be able to speak and not have to stop and think, Goyim are listening, Muslims are listening, and then he has to be careful what he says. And so L'moshel, the Rebbe said, was das azad dover ha-poshet was afil ha-goy ken es verstehen. How do you say that in English? So instantly, b'shas ma'aseh, you have to
improvise.
And you can't make a drasha about it. You have to be translating a bit. So you have to say, and this is so obvious that you don't have to be Jewish to understand it. The same with ladies. Whatever says, Noshim. So after the third Farbrengen, Hillel David brought in a player to the Rebbe's room and put on the Farbrengen, the tape. The Rebbe listened to a whole sicha. He wouldn't stop in the middle of a sicha. He called it good self-image. State of Messinai. So he wouldn't stop in the middle of a sicha. He listened to the whole sicha. Someplace in the sicha, Hillel David wasn't listening with the Rebbe, so he doesn't know where or what. But someplace in the sicha, the Rebbe laughed or smiled, and then said Yeshikoyach, and that was the end of it. So I asked Rabbi Krinsky, many years later, bis mir eingefallen, took me years, was the Rebbe okay with my translating? Avem hat sich the Rebbe verlost. So I asked Yudel, you told the Rebbe that it was a good translation and the Rebbe trusted you? He said, I never told the Rebbe anything. I said, so the Rebbe sich verlost on Hillel David? No. I said, so how did the Rebbe let me do this? Without checking, without nothing? So Yudel says, the Rebbe lets people do what they can. If you volunteer to do it, the Rebbe lets you do it. I said, but this is so personal. Then I find out that Hillel David brought the machine in on the third Farbrengen. So, wait a minute. If the Rebbe wanted to check, why after the third Farbrengen? And if you're checking, there's nothing, no statement, no. That's it. Bye.
No.
What was that? So I asked Yudel, what was that? It's amazing. Yudel said, you don't know the Lubavitcher Rebbe? You think he was checking to see if you did a good job? He was checking to see what he could do better. And then I realized that after that Farbrengen, the next Farbrengen after that, I was translating, the Rebbe said, how many times does the Rebbe say, B'yesed Keyar, B'yesed Eis? Like 5 times at every Farbrengen? So I translated with more strength, with more power. By the next Farbrengen, the Rebbe said, B'yesed Keyar, B'yesed Eis, mit mehr Keyach und mehr enthusiasm.
Wow.
Emma says, after a sicha that I translated, ask me what the sicha was. I have no idea. I have to stop and think like something I learned 10 years ago. So I tried. They wanted during the nigun make a sikum of. I don't know. And now when I learned those sichas, I never heard that before. That's a chiddush to me. So your mind had to be on automatic pilot. So now when I sit down, so let me see if I can translate. No. You cannot do it. You got to completely let go and just, let your mouth do. But the Rebbe darf sich auf dir verlassen that you're not going to say stupid things,
And how many years was that? How many years did you do that for? Or how many?
If I'm not mistaken, the television broadcast wasn't really television, it was satellite. I think it started in Lamed Tes and went through Memches till the Rebbetzin.
It's a long time.
So it's 9 years, maybe 10 years, and 6 times a year.
And you flew in every time from Minnesota.
Yeah.
How long before did you arrive? Saying you just came straight in.
Made no difference because there was nothing to. One thing that Rebbe did, the Rebbe told us on which Masechta there's going to be the Hadron. So that I had, had a chance to take a look.
Right.
So it was Vav Tishrei. Chaf Av. Yud Aleph Nissen. Yud Tes Kislev. Yud Beis Tammuz. All the Chassidish Yom Pagre. There was one other Farbrengen there that was during the week, but it was not on television. Not on the, it was Purim. Purim, the Rebbe said.
Really? And after a few years progressed, did you see a sort of a pattern in each Yom Pagra, anticipating on, what atmosphere the Farbrengen is going to be in?
I don't remember that such an awareness. I know the first 2 sichas were universal. Prayer in public school, morality. And then after the second sicha, Farbrengen. Rashi, Rambam, whatever it is. The Maimer was the easiest. The Maimer was almost like a break. It was smooth, easy. It used a lot of technical terms. That's not a problem. The problem was the Svare hin und zurück in der Sicha. Was Locheve kann man sagen, but no, it's nicht, the American audience, like, so if you knew that it was not a good answer, why didn't you skip it? So then trying to keep, is the Rebbe giving an answer, or is it's a chelik of the shaila? And a number of times I just got stuck, like I'm asking a kasha, this is a teretz, this is. But in the Maimer, it's so smooth. So the Rebbe said, Chochma d'Atzilus. So you say wisdom on the highest level. But the hin and tzurik, that was torture. So when the Rebbe started saying a Maimer, it was like a relief. Like,
it's a break. It was like a break in the Fabrengen.
Yeah. And that's another thing. So when the Rebbe started saying a Maimer in the nigun of a Maimer, you're tempted to sing along. So sing along. The same tone like the sicha. You're just a voice.
What would you say would be a takeaway in a practical application of the idea of anivus be'etzem?
The takeaway is Eined Milvadi. It's not about you. It's not about you. On the lower level, anivus, apisechel, is what's with you? Wo hältst du in der Welt? What's going on with you? Are you living up to your potential? You're not living up to your potential. The higher level is, it's not about you. It really shouldn't matter whether you're an onav or not. Who cares? Was du nicht gehst, du bist ja ein onav, nicht kein onav. But because the Eibishter is Akol Yachol, he can even be interested in your anivus. So it makes no sense why your anivus means anything. But zum Eibishter, if it means something to him, that's fine with me, because to me, and that's the ultimately healthy attitude. It's not about me. Why am I getting depressed? Why am I worried? Why am I anxious? Because I think it's about me. If it's not about me, so what am I worried about? What am I upset? People do like me, they don't like me, man halt von mir, man halt nicht von mir. I'm disappointed, I'm not disappointed, I am an onav, I'm not an onav. That's not my problem. It's not about me. It's a Mashiach dik. That's how it's going to be when Mashiach comes. So going back to that story with the Lanya Briv, with Reb Mordche, what was he so ashamed of? That he thought he was a non-of. He was ashamed of the fact that he thought it was Bechlal about him.
Yeah. He became a real chassid.
Yeah. Anyway, Yasher Koyach.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
It was very enjoyable. And the project should be matzliach. People should learn and get more and more enthusiastic about it and put more chayis into it. Shouldn't get old.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your time and advocating this beautiful project. And to be continued, this Fabrengen, this discussion should be continued very soon.
Psuras Tevis.
Yes. Bye. Good Shabbos.